Okay, this is going to be a fun one today, but we got to try to make it quick because Trick or Treat happened today, and Trick or Treat goes hard in my neighborhood. So I didn't get to start prep time when I wanted to, but you know what? It's an important day. So let's get started, shall we? We're going to start with Brazil. Mr. Lula, the former president of Brazil, whose full name is insane. It's Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. I will never remember that. Everybody just calls him Lula for understandable reasons. So he has won. He has defeated Bolsonaro in Brazil. This is unquestionably good news. It is impossible for anybody to look you in the face that knows what they're talking about and tell you that Lula winning is not good news, because Bolsonaro was psychotic with his policy towards deforestation in the Amazon. The Amazon rainforest is a massive, massive part of the entire planet's water cycle. It is gigantic, and it is also a rainforest that only exists because there is a rainforest there. Rainforests, the trees, in order for them to work, they suck water up out of the ground, and in order to get oxygen into their leaves, they perspirate water out through a very complicated system. But essentially, water comes up out of the ground through the trees and then exits through the leaves into the air, where it gets recollected as rainwater and continues to fall. However, the Amazon rainforest is cut off from crosswinds going across the continent by the Andes Mountains, all traveling down the side. So there isn't actually a mechanism on Earth to keep the rainforest a rainforest. The only thing that keeps it going is the fact that it's a rainforest. The fact that the trees transport the water from the ground to the air is what keeps the rainforest a rainforest. So if you cut the trees down, the rainforest disappears. And it's 18% of all the trees on Earth. So it's an absolutely astronomically huge forest, and fucking with it in any serious capacity is really threatening like an untold amount of an absolutely untold amount of ecosystems, of species, of just general like weather patterns in the area. I mean, the Amazon rainforest, if the forest wasn't already there, if the conditions to create the rainforest or if the conditions that keep the rainforest going weren't there, it would just be a desert. Like, it doesn't have the naturally occurring air currents, the evaporation. The only reason it exists is because it's already there. And Bolsonaro was cutting it down at an alarming rate. And Lula da Silva, let's go here. Lula da Silva is actually pretty good about taking care of the Amazon rainforest. So we're going to start with, it was a historic defeat and a sensational comeback for Lula, who, after serving 2 terms as Brazil's president between 2003 and 2011, Lula went to jail for corruption, though he was later freed after the Supreme Court overturned his convictions. There's some details left out in there. It was very likely a political hit that got him brought up on corruption charges. Lula very likely participated in some kind of unsavory deals while he was president, but there's no hard evidence to prove that any of it was illegal, just questionable. But such is par for the course in today's world. Literally every single political leader in the world has done some things that are questionable but not illegal. So it's not clear whether or not any of the corruption things that were brought up on Lula were founded in any kind of reality at all. They certainly weren't weren't serious enough to warrant putting him in jail for it, especially considering what Bolsonaro has been brought up or has been alleged to have done while he's in office. So I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying, given the way modern politics works, some questionable backroom decision making is it's just kind of going to happen. You kind of have to do that as any kind of political figure of any kind of power in any country, because that's just the way the world works. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. Sometimes you got to get your hands a little dirty to get some stuff done. Was Lula doing it in good faith? Who knows? But that's besides the point for what has happened, because because Bolsonaro, meanwhile, is the first president to lose re-election in 34 years of the nation's modern democracy. He has yet to concede. We will get back to that. The results are also represent a historic moment for the Amazon rainforest, because under President Bolsonaro, deforestation accelerated, threatening not only wildlife and indigenous communities, but also the global climate. But Lula has promised to give the forest a second chance. Let's fight for zero deforestation. Lula said Sunday night after his victory, Brazil is ready to resume its leading role in the fight against the climate crisis, protecting all our biomes, especially the Amazon rainforest. Now, Lula is not just talking shit when it comes to his desire to protect the Amazon rainforest, because when Lula took office just before 2004, the deforestation in the Amazon rainforest was ridiculous. It was over 25,000 square kilometers a year in 2004, which is just after Lula got elected to office the first time. That is insane. That's the size of Belgium, essentially. In that year, they cut down enough trees to cover all of Belgium in the Amazon rainforest. And by the time Lula left office in 2011, they were all the way down to just over 5,000, right about 6,000 square kilometers, which is still not good that anything is being deforested, but you're talking a 6 times drop. Like 6 times less forest was being deforested when Lula left office, and the trajectory was still trending downward. It started to go back up almost immediately once Lula got out of office, but then when Bolsonaro took over, it just poof, like a rocket, takes off. Because Bolsonaro doesn't give a rat's ass about the rainforest. He's only interested in exploiting the natural resources of Brazil, which is an incredibly short-sighted move, given the ridiculous diversity of what's going on in Brazil. The ridiculous diversity of the nature in Brazil. Like, they could easily support a huge chunk of their economy just on tourism, because there's so much stuff in Brazil that doesn't exist anywhere else. But instead, Bolsonaro doubles down on, we're going to log the rainforest until it's gone. We're going to pump oil till it's gone. We're going to strip mine until it's gone. And it's just bad policy. I mean, a very tiny country, not even like what is it? Maybe a couple thousand miles to the north in Costa Rica. Costa Rica is all rainforest, and they have like 70% of their economy is tourism. They're one of the most stable democracies in the world. They rank constantly higher than the United States on democracy rankings, and they're also the single happiest. They're also the country that self-reports the single largest amount of happiness anywhere in the world. And most of their economy is based around the fact that they have untouched rainforest. It's just gorgeous, just monstrously nice, untouched rainforest. And their rainforest is nowhere near as old as the Amazon rainforest is. The Amazon rainforest was around before the Isthmus of Panama came into being. Costa Rica as a landmass didn't even exist when the Amazon rainforest started to come around. And Bolsonaro was just chucking it right in the trash. like, yes, the Amazon rainforest is huge, and it would have taken a very long time to get to the point where it would have collapsed, but you cannot push it because, like I said, it is not a naturally occurring rainforest anymore. It only exists because the rainforest already exists. It's kind of like Las Vegas. Building Las Vegas where Las Vegas is an absolutely stupid thing to do because there's no water there. The city only manages to sustain itself by being amazingly creative with its water recycling infrastructure. But let's be honest, the only reason Vegas exists is because Vegas was already there. If they could have started that city anywhere else, they would have. But Vegas already existed. So somebody decided to kick off the casino boom in Vegas. And the Amazon rainforest is kind of the same way. It only exists because it's already there. If you fuck it up bad enough, it disappears. Which is the same thing that's happening in Africa with the Sahara. As the temperature warms, as climate change increases, and as the countries right around the bottom edge of the Sahara, where it starts to shift into savanna, as they start to become more industrialized and start exploiting their resources, the Sahara has been creeping further and further south. The same thing will happen in South America if Brazil cuts enough of the Amazon rainforest down. So Lula getting elected is ridiculously good news for this front. And it's also, he's got a track record proven of caring about this stuff and taking action about it. So all of that is very good. And apparently my phone is freaking out. All right, come on. Yes, Dark Sage. What's your question that you have? You did not pop up on my screen. I'm sorry if I missed that when it came in. I did not see it. Well, I don't know if you're still there, so I'm gonna move on to the next point, and I'll keep an eye out for another message coming in. I apologize, my phone is not doing its job. Hold on. Technical difficulties. What is... There we go. Okay. So now my chat should come in. Hopefully. Okay, so moving on to the next part of it. So, Mr. Bolsonaro has been definitely being a bad boy when it comes to trying to prevent voters from going out to the poll. He's been engaging in what is basically blatant voter suppression, although he's been trying to veil it and slightly. With the world divided today between left and right-wing governments, what do you imagine South America looking like today if you took the military dictatorships of the 70s and 80s and had people like Pinochet and Banzer and Stroessner in power today? How repressive would they be towards left-wing governments or right-wing governments today? In my opinion, anytime you get a dictatorship, somebody who's only interested in maintaining their own power, then left wing or right wing doesn't really apply. This is what I'm saying is, like, when dictatorships get into power, like, you can classify the politics of the dictatorship as left or right, but the dictatorship itself usually is not interested in left or right wing politics. They're interested in keeping power, and sometimes, rarely, that the way that they keep power is by keeping their constituents happy, by doing things for their constituents. This is one of the things that Saudi Arabia does. Saudi Arabia is ridiculously terrible on like the international stage, and they do a lot of messed up things as far as like penal punishments go, but they're not that bad to the citizens of Saudi Arabia en masse. Like, life there is mostly normal. It's also a lot better than it was in the past. China's kind of the same way. Like, they do bad things, but they do stuff to sort of like what's the word I'm looking for, to calm the population, to make them feel like the government is working for them, when in reality they're just interested in keeping their own power. And it goes, and they either do it through force, North Korea way, or traditional dictatorship way, like a lot of what happened in South America, or they go to pacify the population. But it doesn't actually matter if it's right or left wing that as a competitor to them that comes about. They're just interested in keeping power. And this is how a lot of dictatorships end up ending, is even if they do good things, they'll have a competitor that will come about that will get some sort of traction in their country, and then they end up doing some incredibly stupid shit that pisses people off, and then the whole thing collapses from the end. To be fair, lots of times it happens with the help, especially in South America, of other countries, mostly the US. But it's not about right or left. It's just about maintaining power of whatever the particular party is that forms the dictatorship. I really don't think the politics of the competitor, of the person that comes along to stand against the dictatorship in power, I don't think their politics matter. If they're not trying to maintain power for whoever the dictator is, they don't care. Get the fuck out. Personally, how I feel about it. Says, so getting back to Bolsonaro, it says, from early on Sunday, reports began to surface that the PRF, which is, I guess, like traffic control or something like that in Brazil. I'm not entirely sure what their duties are, but from what I've heard, they're mostly involved with like maintaining traffic. The PRF was conducting illegal roadblocks of buses carrying voters across the Northeast, despite an order by the Superior Electoral Court preventing such operations. The Northeast is a stronghold of Lula voters, and surveys suggest Bolsonaro will need to make major inroads there to come from behind in the polls and clinch victory. Okay, so basically, Bolsonaro has been, he's had people blocking buses from going to the polls, and they've been told to knock it off by the Brazil Supreme Court. But basically what's happened is, officially they've said they'll knock it off, but then unofficially all the people running it have left extra cops out. They've given the cops leeway to pull buses over for any reason. Apparently they were pulling over some for having flat tires, which is a bullshit reason. And it looks like Bolsonaro was trying to suppress the vote it looked like Bolsonaro was trying to suppress the vote to prevent Lula from winning. But it didn't work, and Lula still won. So this has 100% reporting for the votes, and 100% revoting. 100% of the votes are reported, and Bolsonaro has definitely lost. And everybody agrees that voting is over, all of the count is in, and Bolsonaro is done. And despite that, it says right here, Brazil's far-right president Jair Bolsonaro has fallen silent after chastening election defeat to his leftist rival Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. A stream of world leaders has stepped forward to recognize Lula's stunning political comeback, including U.S. President Joe Biden, UK Prime Minister, blah, blah, blah. But Bolsonaro, a pro-dictatorship radical who has repeatedly hinted he might not accept defeat, has yet to concede. His last message on Twitter, an excerpt from the biblical book of Ephesians, was posted at 2 minutes before midnight on eve of the election. he went on to lose by a margin of more than 2 million votes. With 100% of votes counted, Lula secured 50.9 to Bolsonaro's 49.1. Lula received 60.3 million votes, while the right-wing incumbent had 58.2 million. The defeat makes Bolsonaro the first serving president in Brazilian history to be voted out of office. Lula will take over on the 1st of January 2023. While Bolsonaro remains mute, key allies did accept the result, and a sign that the populist power was rapidly ebbing away from 4 tumultuous years in office. Okay, so basically, Bolsonaro has decided that it's not worth coming out immediately and saying, yes, I lost. Why he's doing that is not clear at the moment, because Bolsonaro is a particularly unsavory fellow. And it's not clear whether or not he will concede power willingly. He may have to be forced. He may try to hold on to power despite the fact that he lost, but who knows? We'll see at this point. But he's definitely being a particularly ungracious loser at best, and planning something awful at worst. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. So we'll move on to the next thing I wanted to talk about. Thanks for the comments, Dark Sage. I appreciate them coming in. I hope I answered some questions before you bounced. But so let's move on to the next thing.